Treating the mind is just as important as treating the body.
And unfortunately, we don't often hear doctors address that enough.
Welcome to a special episode for Mental Health Awareness Month, because if you're living with physical pain, you know it is not just physical. The stress, the anxiety, the emotional toll, it's all very real, and it can trap you in a frustrating cycle of pain and emotional burnout. So today we're going to unpack that powerful mind-body connection with two expert voices from VSI, neurologist Dr. Ella Akkerman. Hi, Dr. Akkerman. And Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, Dr. Yash Mehta. Thank you both for taking the time to have this conversation today.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so we want to validate what people are feeling, and that means we really need to get real. So, our goal today is to move beyond the obvious and really try and dig into how you manage stress and your mental health with so much uncertainty around pain and what's going on with your body and all of those things. So, Dr. Ackerman, you're a neurologist and an expert on how we help our brains. Dr. Mehta, you are an expert on healing our bodies. We're going to focus on this topic from both of those directions. So, let's jump in. Dr. Mehta, I want to start with you, and how hard this topic is for a lot of us to talk about, because you get really honest about that. What are your thoughts? Why is this such a difficult topic?
I think there's a couple of things, right? Not to blame other people for our own problems, but I think a lot of what we do in life is learned behavior, right? And so whether that mean we learn from our parents or ancestors or culture, or we learn from social media and those around us. And I think both of those are very big into what we see potentially, as people call it, like a mental health epidemic or something going on, right? And so, coming from a South Asian background, mental health is not something we really talk about, right? Luckily, my dad is kind of emotional, and I'm an emotional man, so I've seen him cry often. But when I talk to my friends, most people haven't seen their parents cry, or males don't cry, and so it becomes, and even in society, right? It's like, man up, be strong. And so these are things that we perpetuate in society. Or on my Instagram, everyone is living their best lives, but I don't know what the reality of their life is beyond that, right? Instagram versus reality. And I think those are two key factors of society, culturally, historically. What are we expecting people to feel, and how are we expecting them to portray that? We want them to keep those feelings inside and just stiffen up and go about their day and act like nothing's wrong, but then that takes a toll internally. And what science has found, and from an osteopathic background, we really believe that that not only has a mental toll on your body, but a great physical toll as well.
You talk a lot about how doctors can model for people how to do this, even when it's hard, and acknowledging that it's hard for you, personally, as just as much as it is for someone else. Dr. Ackerman, let's start with you. I want to give you both a chance to model how you talk about this. So, how do each of you manage your mental health personally?
So for me personally, it's just knowing what makes you happy and what makes you sad, just as when we are children, and most of us are children, we build defense mechanisms as we grow, as we're faced with challenges, and that develops us as individuals, builds our egos. And so recognizing what makes us happy, what makes us sad, and being okay with it, being nice to ourselves, being kind to ourselves, non-judgmental to ourselves. Because if we're going to judge ourselves, how do we expect others not to judge
Yeah.
us? Who else is going to be out there non-judgmental towards us, right? So we should not be judgmental to ourselves. And
And you talk
Uh,
about that healthy self-image. In order to have that healthy self-image, you have to be able to acknowledge what makes you happy, acknowledge what makes you sad, and have that not diminish you in some way, right? I mean,
that
is
is
that
exactly right. That is, I think we have to recognize that we should just observe who we are without judgment as much as we can first. And only then can we, in an unbiased way, come up with solutions to what we need to do.
and to talk about it?
Exactly, exactly. So for me personally, um, my happy go-to place is music. Music always has been my happy go-to place. It doesn't matter how sad I am. I can listen to music. I can play music. I can interact with people while doing music. It builds my creative energy. It makes me escalate that creative energy, and that creative energy somehow cancels all the bad things. So I'm lucky because I found that sweet spot. And that's what I wish for my patients to do when I talk to them. That's what I try to elicit in my patients. Usually I'm like, what makes you tick? What is one thing that makes you happy? What would you do if you didn't have anything else to do today, but wanted to make yourself happy? What would that be?
Dr.
You know,
Mehta,
that
what about you? Because I know you're honest about the fact that as even though you're a doctor, you're not always nailing this.
Yeah, I think one thing Dr. Ackerman says a lot is you have to be honest with yourself, and be okay with yourself. Those are two things that I've, in prepping for this and hearing her talk about patients and just giving advice. And I think that really sticks with me because you're right. She brought up a good point earlier of if you're doing all these things or you expect your patient to do this, but they see that you're not okay with yourself, or you're not comfortable in your own skin. How are they going to look at you? And none of us are really comfortable in their own skin. And my experience has been sometimes when I've been the most vulnerable with the patient, they've actually maybe accepted me more for they've given me more validity and they've trusted me more than if I was like, as a doctor, this is what you need to do because my life is perfect. When I'm like, hey, no, I have chronic pain or I have some sadness, I'm seeing physical therapy, and they're like, oh, you need physical therapy too? This is something you're struggling with? Okay, we're in this boat together. And now I understand that you know where I'm coming from. So that's one thing, getting honest with the patients is important. And then a thing that she hinted on, how do I practice that, or what's my thing is, at the end of the day, something that gives me solace is my family, my friends, spending time with my kids. And another thing is, I'm a practicing Hindu, and so faith is something that really gives me solace. And so there's a verse in the Gita which essentially says we only have control over our actions and our intent, but we can't always control the outcome, right? So um, what is my intention in treating in my patients? Am I trying to be a good person? Am I trying to see the best in them? What is my intention when I have an interaction with friends or family? That's my control. Now, how they perceive that, are they upset? Are they happy? I can't really get bogged down because those things, when I start getting stressed about that, to Dr. Ackerman's point, that can put me in a bad place. It can set that spiral. And so at the end of the day, or in the mornings and in the evenings, when I try to sit alone and I just try to think about what was my intention, can I work on being a better person internally?
And I like I like having the two of you sitting there because we can really talk about this link between all of these things we're talking about here with your mental health and then the impact that it has on your body. As a neurologist, Dr. Ackerman, what is the science between how all of these mental health issues that we're talking about connect to pain in the brain?
Well, I tell my patients that it's not just because I'm a neurologist that I think that, but in fact, brain is the most sensitive and most important structure of our body. And everything starts in the
Mm-hmm.
brain, whether you want it or you don't. And so our world, the way we perceive it every day, outside and in, reflects upon how our brain responds to it, negatively or positively, with emotion. And if it's a positive emotion, it's recognized by a structure called the amygdala that sends positive emotion signals to a structure called hypothalamus, which is ultimately the brother chemical plant of the amygdala that actually executes what amygdala intends to do but can't do it by itself. So the hypothalamus then releases certain chemicals that provide further guidance for the rest of the brain and the body to act certain way. It either acts positively or negatively in terms of the types of chemicals it sends. And so then if if amygdala is not happy, hypothalamus sends negative chemicals like adrenaline towards the rest of our body. And if it does that on chronic basis, a chemical called cortisol gets produced in adrenal glands, which is in our bodies on top of our kidneys. And that chemical is a stress hormone. And over time, it increases our blood pressure. It slows our metabolism. Blood sugars go up, we gain weight, our sleep is disrupted, our pain threshold goes down.
So
That's the
it
very
doesn't really
important
matter.
point.
It doesn't matter which one comes first, does it? It's just that I guess when patients come to each of you, there's either a trigger, right? Either it's something neurological like headaches or, you know, a concussion or something like that, or in your case, Dr. Mehta, it would be something physical and, you know, I guess from the neck down, right, where there's some sort of pain they're dealing with. What do you see in terms of the linkage and where it starts? Do you guys have, you know, do patients see both of you? Do you each just take different areas? How does it work?
I mean, I think we focus on different things, but where the benefit of our practice at VSI is Dr. Ackerman and I literally work maybe 5 feet apart in terms of where, when we're during the day when the clinic is going, her and I are 5 to 10 feet max apart when we're working. So often we can go across to each other and be like, hey, this is something this person's working with. They're seeing me for shoulder pain, but they're also having headaches that are triggered for that, blah, blah, blah. I think I want to send them to you or whatnot. So we're able to communicate in terms of that regard, which is unique and not all people have that. Other practices, they say, hey, see a neurologist and it's a 3-month wait, right? And so that becomes a big ordeal. But I think what you're hitting on is more important is it's hard to tell, is it what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We're not sure, but they are definitely related, right? So someone can have a back injury or a neck injury, and now maybe they're out of work, and so they're stressed. And so now that stress, all the reasons Dr. Ackerman talked about, the cortisol and muscle tension, lack of sleep, now maybe that's having downstream effects of that being out of work, that stress plus the muscular pain is now causing more headaches or causing more stress, causing more pain, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Or is it someone that maybe just has stress? For example, I deal with TMJ pain on and off, and I realize my TMJ flares up when I'm stressed about things. I just took the boards half a month ago, and I'm waiting for the results of that. And so I've noticed that in the mornings I'm waking up with headaches because I realize I'm grinding my teeth more. So is it the stress that triggers the pain, or sometimes the pain triggers the stress? Doesn't matter, right? Because they are linked very closely hand in hand. So it doesn't matter where in that roundabout you get into the traffic circle. But once you're in the traffic circle, you have to figure out, well, what's my exit? How do I get out of here? And again, the benefit here is we're able to work together to help patients. But at the end of the day, it comes down to finding out the triggers. So was the trigger the back pain? Then can we get your back pain alleviated, right? Do we need medications? Do we need therapy? Or is the trigger now that you're stressed about returning to work and how am I going to pay the bills? Well, then, yes, we still need to address the back pain, but we also need to address the stress and get you. We can help you out. Dr. Ackerman says this very well. We can help you as much as we can, but we all need to be honest about the situation together. And then sometimes we may need to get you to a medical professional, right? Because they're the ones that really are trained in this and we want to help and we're here for you, but we may not always have all the right answers. And so the quicker we can come to that conclusion of, hey, we need help, then we can find the right avenues to get that help.
Dr. Ackerman, how often do mental health factors affect a patient's progress? How they respond to treatment, how they recover, how they
A
heal?
$1 million question.
Does it, how deeply
Every
does it
day,
impact?
in every human, to some extent. And we all know this, right? They start teaching us in high school. I remember I had a health class where they started talking about stress and how we have to understand that brain is connected to our body is connected to our brain, that everything impacts everything. So we all know this, theoretically. But how many of us really embrace it in everyday life and remind ourselves of that?
Okay,
That's a skill.
that is a
That is
skill. Yeah, let's talk about how to do that. And this is where I want to go beyond the obvious because I feel like we hear people say exercise and meditate and do all of these things. And aspirationally, it sounds great, but sometimes there's not time in the day. Sometimes you don't have the mental bandwidth. So, you know, there's all
right.
these barriers. So help us dig into the how people can work on this. Dr. Mehta, 3 solutions you talk about that I like are sleep, baby steps, and setting clear boundaries. Talk me through each of those if you would.
Yeah, I think and people that know me well in my clinic and my staff and family, and I can't take the credit for this. Actually, my wife read a book on this, but sleep is paramount in terms of all other health aspects. So, really quickly, if this is your first time tuning in, um, all these medical studies have shown that if there's one positive change you can make on your life in terms of diabetes, heart risk, everything, it's just getting more sleep and proper sleep. And so then we can talk about this ad nauseum somewhere else
Is there a
about what are
specific amount of time we should be aiming for as adults, or
yeah,
is it
and
that
it varies for males and females. So I think males need about at least 7 hours. Females actually need a little bit more, so about 8 hours of sleep. So that's something societally, right? We don't know and we don't talk about the differences, even physiologically, between men and women and how our bodies are different, obviously, but how that has different implications and what we need to do. But sleep is a big one. How much sleep? Actually, any caffeine, they say in the day. It's sometimes we think, well, I had my coffee at 11 a.m. Any caffeine sometimes can be detriment. So a change that I've made is I like coffee for the taste, not for the caffeine. Luckily, I don't need caffeine in a day. And so I drink decaf. I drink coffee every day, but it's decaf because any caffeine, especially after noon or 2 p.m., can be detrimental. It's not just caffeine in the evening before sleep, right? So
so
things
should you
about sleep
test that
hygiene.
out? Like, I'm someone who does need a little caffeine in the morning, but I do think that way. I'm like, oh, if I, as long as I don't have it like after 2, maybe I'm fine. Should I play
Yes.
around with that? Should I?
You should play around. And again, a lot of things I tell my patients are everyone's a little bit different, unfortunately. So let's say, Jenny, that you stop drinking caffeine, and then now you just become crankier during the day, and you're more stressed because you're like, I'm not getting my work done. Well,
Right.
then now maybe you're not getting good sleep, and that stress is contributing to your mental health. But overall, if you feel like, hey, I have a good routine, let me try making again. That brings me to point two, right? Baby steps. And so
Mhm.
if you're like, let me try maybe moving back my caffeine an hour earlier in the morning from maybe 2 to 1 or 1 to noon, make that change and see, do I notice a change in my sleep? A change that I've noticed is trying not to be on my phone maybe 20, 30 minutes before bed, or if I'm on my phone, do it in the living room. And I've said that to patients countless times, but I haven't followed through on that. And now that I've made some small changes like that, that's helped me because then I'm able to fall asleep a little bit quicker versus being up because the blue light is now all messed with my head and things like that. And so, right, so sleep is important, and everything that I can do kind of goes back towards sleep, but also mental health. And so then, baby steps, which you mentioned. So, am I working a little bit on sleep? Am I doing something else where maybe I'm practicing some mindfulness in the morning or evening, just reflecting on my day and practicing some gratefulness and being like, hey, the end of the day, I'm really stressed. But if I take time to think about 3 things I'm grateful for, then now maybe I'm a little less stressed because I'm like, hey, I thought this day was really bad, but here are 3 things that keep me grounded and make me grateful to wake up tomorrow morning. And that's a really good one.
And what do you
And so
mean about the setting clear boundaries?
setting clear boundaries kind of just means in terms of, I think, for me, what that means is boundaries, whether that means professionally or socially or things like that. Sometimes I think we're in this world where we feel like we have to be yes men, and those boundaries, if we're not clear on those, then they can permeate into our lives. I think in general, I don't think anybody would deny that before COVID, we probably had a better work-life balance because when you log off at 5, you're done for the day. And so I would like to bet, I mean, we don't have studies on this, but I would almost guarantee that we were as a society slightly less stressed before COVID than after COVID. Obviously, there's a pandemic, but what I have noticed for myself and my friends who are actually in IT and other things like that, they're like, now I don't really log off because if my manager needs something at 9 p.m., I have my laptop at home because I work from home. So is that a clear boundary, right? For me, that's important, right? So when I was just having this conversation on the elevator up with one of my colleagues, and I said, for me, when I'm done with work and if I see the last patient, if it's 5 p.m., I go home because that's my kids. That's my time with my kids, and that's sacred for me. And that actually puts me in a happy spot, happy place, but that's important. And then when the kids go back to bed at 8:30, I can do notes later. But if I stay here till 6:30 and I don't go home to reworking on my notes, now I've really shortened that time that I have with my family, and I don't think that's worth the sacrifice.
Okay, great point.
Good for
Great point.
you.
Yeah.
Dr. Ackerman,
So
what about
discipline.
you? What do you think are some of the solutions that work. And
You
then
need time off. You need time off. You need your brain to shut down.
Yeah.
When you were talking, I was just trying to echo what you just said. I was listening to you and I was just thinking about all these very important points. Sleep, right? Compartmentalizing, knowing when to take time off. I tell my patients, your brain is like a really complicated computer. Do you shut down your computer sometimes because it starts glitching? Well, your brain will start glitching too if you don't shut it down.
Yeah.
And sleep is what it is. You shut down your brain during sleep, hopefully, if you have restorative sleep, right? But if you
Yeah.
have all this caffeine interfering, you never get this deep restorative sleep.
I know you talk a lot about support systems and how valuable they are. I've also heard you talk about how many people don't have them for whatever reason, either geographically you're living far apart from someone, or maybe you don't have the kind of support system that you want. What then? What do we need to talk about in those scenarios?
Right. So I think one of the most important things is to understand what support system is. All right. Support system is not just people and family that's physically there. It is your access to outlets of relieving of getting your stress and negative energy out. So you need to understand your support system from that standpoint, and then you'll probably be much more successful at finding help, right? So you need to understand, first of all, the activities and the behaviors and environments that make you stronger.
Let me ask one follow-up question, which is, when do doctors become part of your support system, or should they?
Yes, when you do not have enough help and you recognize it. You recognize it. You recognize that you cannot do it alone. And being honest with yourself is part of that, right? We have to be okay with feeling vulnerable. We should be okay with admitting to ourselves we are not okay. That is a number one step towards success of finding emotional balance and happiness, recognizing that we are not okay and sharing it.
You have to share it with someone.
Sharing it.
I've heard
Sharing
stories
it.
from your
It is
patients
great.
in interesting ways. There's one patient I remember who was really struggling with her pain, and she was coming regularly to see one of your physical therapists, and that's who she mentioned it to. And he encouraged her to go to a counselor, and that really helped things. That can really turn around not just your mental health, but that physical health piece of it too, right? Okay, so let's go through some key takeaways here. Kind of give me your lightning round of the best things, the best suggestions for people if they're struggling with this, circuitous cycle of pain and mental health challenges. Dr. Ackerman, you first. Top takeaways.
Yes. Open up to yourself mentally, be introspective. If you don't know how to be introspective, start by doing something you enjoy that allows your mind to relax, whether it's yoga, meditation, music, whatever, walking in the park, that will relax you enough to be able to connect with your emotions. Okay? That is very important. That's how you start the process of introspection. Do not be judgmental towards yourself. Try not to be. Be okay with not being okay, and knowing that you're not alone and help is out there. And when you cannot do any of those things, but you recognize you're not okay, be brave and seek help. Okay? And you have to seek help in the right places. Just like I tell my patients, if you've got a dent in your car, you don't go to Jiffy Lube, you go to a body shop. Don't, you know. Sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah.
Let's say you go to your OBGYN or you go to a primary care doctor and you find that connection with them and you'll get all your emotions out and then you're much better. But psychiatrists or psychotherapists, psychologists, they are the trained professionals who can actually help you connect with your emotions, who can help you understand what's wrong and how to try to solve it. And so don't be hopeless.
Okay.
Although you will be,
But keep
but
going.
but just keep going. There is a light at the end of the tunnel.
All right. And Dr. Mehta, what are your takeaways for folks?
Just two big ones, right? The first is thinking about sleep and think treating this as a marathon, not a sprint. Our health, our mental health, our life is a marathon, not a sprint. And so you don't train for a marathon by just running 26 miles one day, right? You start with maybe 3 miles and 5 miles, and you build and you set baby steps and goals. And so do that with this, right? Do you need to start being like, hey, I just want to get through today. My goal right now is I'm in a bad spot. I'm really stressed. I'm in pain. I want to get through the rest of the day, and that's a win for me. And then tomorrow, it's I want to get through a whole day or a whole week. So baby steps. And I think the biggest thing is the second takeaway for me would be that it's okay to fail, and we're all in this together. We have struggles. We have battles. There's times when I'm down. Um, Even my family and my friends, I'm like, I don't want to hang out with anybody right now. I just want to be by myself. But if there's things, and Dr. Ackerman made a great point, be honest with yourselves, find things that ground you. I've mentioned for me, it's faith and family. And she brought up a good point. We acknowledge our privilege, right? We have a good support system socially, but some people don't. So then is it turning to music? Is it turning to literature? What do you turn to? But I think that's important of we're all in this together. Nobody's perfect. Society makes us think we have to be or other people are. But if you stick to the baby steps, when you fail, if you do baby steps, the it's like snakes and ladders, right? But then you can only go down a rung. You don't go down all the way down the slide because you've set up baby steps and you're like, okay, this was a good checkpoint that I succeeded at. Now I can pick up from there. And I think that's important.
Well, I appreciate both of you. We're doing this episode during Mental Health Awareness Month. The whole point
Yeah.
of that month is to have these kinds of conversations, that it doesn't have to be perfect, but we need to talk about it. And I think having two doctors talk about that and acknowledge all the things you all are acknowledging is really important. So thank you both for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.